Well, I'm happy to be with you again since we last met, and we're welcoming all our brothers and sisters that are joining us, some of you for the first time. And we trust that as we sit here together at the feet of Jesus, that our hearts will be encouraged and blessed. And so I want to thank my brother for opening us with prayer. And our focus actually this morning is on Revelation chapter 7. That's where our focus will be today, Revelation chapter 7. I've entitled this presentation, "The Righteous Will Be Delivered, So Fear Ye Not Their Fear." There's a thought there. Inspiration tells us the truth and the glory of God are inseparable. It is impossible for us with the Bible within our reach to honor God by erroneous opinions. Many claim that it matters not what one believes if his life is only right. But the life is molded by the faith. If light and truth is within our reach, and we neglect to improve the privilege of hearing and seeing it, we virtually rejected it. We are choosing darkness rather than light. Inspiration is saying, if light and truth is within our reach, and we neglect to improve the privilege of hearing and seeing it, we virtually reject it. We are choosing darkness rather than light. God has given his word that we may become acquainted with it, that we may become acquainted with its teachings and know for ourselves what he requires of us. When the lawyer came to Jesus with the inquiry, "What shall I do to inherit eternal life?" the Savior referred him to the scriptures, saying, "What is written in the law? How readest thou?" And I know by God's grace, that's why we are all following the Lord. We all want to be with him in eternity. We all want to have eternal life. And that was the request of the young man. And Inspiration said that Jesus pointed him to the scriptures. That's where we are told how to have or to inherit eternal life. In the scriptures. We're told again that the servant of the Lord in the book Great Controversy, and that we read just now, Great Controversy, page 597. She tells us in the Great Controversy, page 598, it is not enough to have good intentions. It is not enough to do what a man thinks is right or what the minister tells him is right. His soul's salvation is at stake, and he should search the scriptures for himself. However strong may have been his convictions, however confident he may be that the minister knows what is truth, this is not his foundation. He has a chart pointing out every waymark on the heavenward journey, and he ought not to guess at anything. It is the first and highest duty of every rational being to learn from the scriptures what is truth, and then to walk in the light and encourage others to follow his example. We should day by day study the Bible diligently, weighing every thought and comparing scripture with scripture. With divine help, we are to form our own opinions. We are to form our opinions for ourselves, as we are to answer for ourselves before God. Very important words, brothers and sisters. The importance of studying the Bible for ourselves. Forming our opinions for ourselves, asking the Lord to help us to understand the scriptures, because they're not written there for us to leave idle. They're given to us for us to understand what is the will of God. They're given to us for us to know how to inherit eternal life. As I said, we're going to be looking at the subject of the 144,000, Revelation 7, 1 to 8. Who are they? What is the Bible telling us about this company of people? And how does it relate to us at this time? The subject of the 144,000. Yes, we are told most of the times by our leaders that this subject is not that much important, that we should not bother ourselves with it. And one of the statements that they use to convince the people that we should not worry with this subject too much is found in the book One Selected Messages, page 174, paragraph 3. And I think we are going to accept our brother's prayer just now, thanking the Lord that he will answer our prayers as we go through this presentation here this morning. That he will be with us to encourage and inspire us as we read the word of God together. We are told, One Selected Messages, page 174. Inspiration says, Christ says, and she was speaking here, the 144,000. Christ says that there will be those in the church who will present fables and suppositions. When God has given grand, elevating, ennobling truths, which should ever be kept in the treasure house of the mind. When men pick up this theory and that theory, when they are curious to know something it is not necessary for them to know, God is not leading them. And then she says, it is not his plan that his people shall present something which they have to suppose, which is not taught in the word. It is not his will that they shall get into controversy over questions which will not help them spiritually, such as who is to compose the 144,000. This, those who are the elect of God will in a short time know without question. Let us pray. Loving Father and dear God, again we bow in your presence this morning, thanking you for this privilege to sit at your feet, to open your word to our hearts, and that as we speak your words this morning, that our hearts will be blessed, and those whom this discussion of your word will come before their attention or before their hearing, they too will be blessed as we discuss your words. Please forgive our sins, blot out our transgressions and our iniquities, and cover us with the righteousness of our dear brother and our friend Christ Jesus, and accept our offering now, we pray. Bless all of us here and take full control of everything that would be said and done. And like my brother asked, I pray that you would bless the medium that we are using to glorify your name this morning. In Jesus' precious name, amen. Amen. Now, this is a serious statement we have just read here. And as I said, it is used mainly, one of the statements that are used by our brothers and sisters to encourage many in the church today not to worry about this subject of the 144,000. That Sister White is saying it is not necessary for us to worry ourselves with it. But is it that what inspiration is telling us here? Yes, we are told that Christ says that there will be those in the church who will present fables and suppositions. Maybe, and I think so, and it may be that. when they are grand, elevating, ennobling truths that we can deal with. And inspiration is saying that one of the subjects that this is dealt with most of the time in such a manner is the subject of the 144,000, mainly as to who will compose the number. And that word is very important, because what inspiration is saying is that there will be some who will be trying to determine who will be a part of the number, who will be a part of this group of people that the Bible is there speaking of. To compose it is to be made up of it or by it. And so inspiration is saying, it is not his will that they, God's people, shall get into controversy over questions which will not help them spiritually, such as who is to compose the 144,000. But then she says, those who are the elect of God will in a short time know without question. So we cannot sit here this morning and determine who will compose, who will make up that company, whether Brother Smith will be in it or brother or sister A or B will compose it. We don't know. But inspiration is saying there will come a time when God's people will know. And I'm sure you will agree with me, it will be at the time when it is made up, when they themselves will be a part of it, or with those who will be with them. They will know that this is the company, just like the apostles. You and I know today who comprised or who are those that are apostles of God, those 12 men that Jesus elected. The 144,000 will also be known at the right time. And so inspiration is telling us we are not to worry ourselves with that as to who will compose that company. But she is not here telling us that the subject is not to be studied. Because in another statement that is written by inspiration, the servant of the Lord, we are told in the book 7 Bible commentary, page 970, paragraph 10, let us strive with all the power that God has given us to be among the 144,000. Now, why would God be telling us to strive to be among this company if we are to know nothing about them? We are not to study the subject. How will you strive to be among them if you're not considering anything about them? And so that statement that we read in one selected messages must be taken in its true context. Inspiration is not saying the subject should not be dealt with, should not be studied. Inspiration is saying we should not worry ourselves as to who will compose them. But here we are being told we are to strive to be among them. And so the subject is important. And that's the reason why we want to look at it this morning and see how deep we can go in understanding what the Lord is telling us here concerning this subject. It is found in the book of Revelation, chapter 7. Let us read verse 1 to verse 4. Revelation 7, verse 1 through to verse 4. The Bible says, verse 1, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding 4 winds from blowing on the earth, the sea, and any tree. Verse 2 says, Revelation 7, verse 2, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Verse 4, And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. And so many claim that this subject is not important, but here inspiration is giving us a prophecy concerning this subject. And these prophecies are not written in the Bible to just take up space and to be here idle. They're given to us for us to understand, for us to know what the Lord is telling us. Hence, inspiration tells us in the book Testimonies to the Church, Volume 2, page 692. We are told there are in the scriptures some things which are hard to be understood, and which, according to the language of Peter, the unlearned and unstable rest unto their own destruction. We are not in this life, we may not in this life be able to explain the meaning of every passage of scripture. But there are no vital points of practical truth that will be clouded in mystery. When the time shall come in the providence of God for the world to be tested upon the truth for that time, minds will be exercised by the Spirit to search the scriptures, even with fasting and with prayer, until link after link is searched out and united in a perfect chain. Every fact which immediately concerns the salvation of souls will be made so clear that none need err or walk in darkness. And so your inspiration is telling us that it is dangerous for us to leave on the shelf, so to speak, information that is necessary for our time that God would have revealed. And so she said, yes, there are some scriptures that may never be understood, but those that pertains to us and the time that we are living in, God is going to make it so plain that no one need to walk in error or error. And so if inspiration is telling us that we're to strive with all the power that God has given us to be among the 144,000, it tells us that this is a subject that is for our time. And we should understand it. And God is going to make it so plain and clear that it is going to be understood. And so we cannot be like those who will wrest the scripture and just put it aside because we claim we cannot understand it. With prayer, the Lord, through his Spirit, is there to reveal these things to us. And so we saw just now in Revelation chapter 7, 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding back 4 winds from blowing upon the earth. The Bible said they're to hold these winds, not forever, but they're to hold them until the 144,000 are sealed. You see, these 4 angels that are holding the winds are doing something that if they do not do it, inspiration is telling us it is going to affect the sealing of God's people. They're holding it until the 144,000 are sealed. The 144,000 must be a special people to God for the Lord to be holding back these winds until they are sealed. There is something about this company that he is trying to preserve them, to seal them before these winds begin to blow. And the Bible said that they are sealed from Israel. So these are points we want to go a little deeper into. Who is this Israel that they are sealed from? Is it ancient Israel? Is it those Israelites there in the land today? Or is there another company of people that the Bible referred to as Israel that they are being sealed from amongst the 144,000? But let's begin where John started. He said he saw 4 angels holding 4 winds from blowing upon the earth. Must be symbolic. These winds, they must represent something that God is holding back from coming upon the earth that if he allows it to come before the 144,000 are sealed, it's going to affect them. And so he's holding it back until they're sealed. Now, what do winds represent in Bible prophecy? We're given another prophecy in the Bible found in the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 7, where Daniel telling us of 4 beasts that he saw coming up out of the sea, and that he said there was 4 winds of the heavens striving upon the great sea from whence these beasts came. And inspiration tells us in the book Great Controversy, page 439 over to 440, we are told, the great kingdoms that have ruled the world were presented to the prophet Daniel as beasts of prayer, rising when the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. Daniel 7 verse 2. In Revelation 17, an angel explained that waters represent peoples and multitudes and nations and towns. Revelation 17:15. Winds are a symbol of strife. The 4 winds of heaven striving upon the great sea represent the terrible scenes of conquest and revolution by which the kingdoms have attained to power. And so your inspiration is telling us the way Babylon, Medo-Persia, Grecia, and Rome came upon the scene through conflicts and warfare, it was there identified by the 4 winds striving upon the great sea. So God was predicting how these nations were to come into existence by these 4 winds blowing upon the great sea. And the sea there represents the multitude of people of that era, the old age, or the old world, where humanity began. And so among the conflicts and the turmoil and war of the ancient world, these 4 kingdoms came upon the scene one after the other through those conflicts. And so winds are a symbol of strife. But I'm sure you will agree with me that these 4 winds of Revelation chapter 7 cannot represent ordinary strife, wars and conflicts among the nations, because we have been having a lot of that. And the angels are not holding that back. We had World War I, World War II. We seem to be making preparation to go into World War III. But between that, there are many conflicts and wars among the nations that are not being held back. So what is the strife, the specific strife that these 4 angels are holding? And the Lord has not left us to guess. Yes, they represent conflict, strife, but it's a specific conflict, a specific strife that should it be permitted to blow before the 144,000 are sealed, it will affect God's work. It will affect God's mission. It will affect God's people. And so inspiration tells us exactly what these 4 winds of Revelation chapter 7 represent. And it is revealed to us in the book Testimonies to the Church, volume 5, page 152. Here the Lord tells us exactly what these winds represent, for we are told, the time is coming when we cannot sell at any price. The decree will soon go forth prohibiting men to buy or sell of any man save him that had the mark of the beast. We came near having this realized in California a short time since, but this was only the threatening of the blowing of the 4 winds. We came near having this realized in California. That was in the lifetime of Sister White. And she was saying at that time they came near having it realized in California, but she said this was only the threatening of the blowing of the 4 winds. Then she says, as yet they are held by the 4 angels. We are not just ready. There's a work yet to be done, and then the angels will be bidden to let go, that the 4 winds may blow upon the earth. That will be a decisive time for God's children, a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Now is our opportunity to work. So here inspiration is telling us exactly what the 4 winds of Revelation chapter 7 represents. She's saying that it represents, or it is referring to that time when we will not be able to buy or sell except we receive the mark of the beast. And she said in her lifetime, in her time, it was just around the 1800s, there was a Sunday movement on foot that was pushing through the Congress of America to bring into existence this Sunday blue law. And she said, the decree will soon go forth prohibiting men to buy or sell of any man save him that had the mark of the beast. We came near having this realized in California a short time since, but this was only the threatening of the blowing of the four winds. So God's people got a taste, so to speak, as to what is coming. But because we were not ready, God held it back. The angels continue to hold. She said that as yet they're held by the four angels. We are not just ready. There's a work yet to be done. And what is that work? It would have to be the work of having God's people sealed, because as soon as they are sealed, the winds will begin to blow. That's the only thing that is holding the wind back. The sealing of the 144,000. And so, yes, this was on foot in this article here, in the book Testimony, volume 5, page 211. She gave us a glimpse as to what was happening at that time. And the caption is the impending conflict. She said, a great crisis awaits the people of God. A crisis awaits the world. The most momentous struggle of all the ages is just before us. Events which for more than 40 years we have, upon the authority of the prophetic word declared to be impending, are now taking place before our eyes. Already the question of an amendment to the Constitution restricting liberty of conscience has been urged upon the legislators of the nation. The question of enforcing Sunday observance has become one of national interest and importance. We well know what the result of this movement will be. But are we ready for the issue? Have we faithfully discharged the duty which God has committed to us of giving the people warning of the danger before them? And this article is a lovely article to read. We will not be able to read the entire article because of time, but I'm going to encourage you to read it or reread it if we would have read it before, because we can say today, as we're observing what is happening in the world, that men are pushing to bring something that will again amend the Constitution. Today, it may look as though it's going in one direction, but you and I should know exactly where they're trying to go. And the question arises again, are we ready? That is what should concern us most. Being ready, not for some of the things that are being discussed today so much, but when Sunday keeping would be made a law. And how can we be ready? And these are some of the things we want to go into this morning to make sure by God's grace, when those winds are loosed, we will be found secure, ready. You see, those winds, when they are loose, they're going to bring upon the world a trouble. That's what inspiration calls it. She calls it the time of trouble. She says, we are not just ready, there's a work yet to be done, and then the angels will be bidden to let go, that the four winds may blow upon the earth. That will be a decisive time for God's children, a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. Now is our opportunity to work. You see, in the Bible, there are found two periods of time that God's people in the Christian era are brought face to face with trouble. The first one is referred to as the tribulation, and the second, the time of trouble. Now, it's very important for us to assess what these mean or what they represent, because many are confused about them. We are mixing up the tribulation with the time of trouble. They're two different events. The tribulation was a time when God's people suffered, when God permitted the nations to destroy his people. You see, moving from the four corners of the compass, the winds must represent a worldwide disturbance of some kind. The blowing and the angels hurting represents two armies in conflict. Now, what am I speaking of? In Revelation chapter 7, most of the time when it is read, we see four angels holding four wings and one angel sealing. But in Revelation chapter 7, carefully analyzed, reveals 9 angels. And those 9 angels, specifically the four holding four winds and 4 being told not to hurt, will reveal the difference between the tribulation and the time of trouble. We're going to get a little deeper into that. The winds blowing is, of course, the anger of the nations against the saints, because it represents, as inspiration says, the mark of the beast, the time of trouble, the time when God's people will not be able to buy nor sell. So the winds represent a strife, a conflict that the nations will be bringing against God's people. But those 4 angels that were told not to hurt represents God's judgment that is to fall upon the enemies of his people. And so in those verses are wrapped up a conflict for these last days that is about to burst upon the world. The angels and the winds together represents a trouble between God and the nations, involving both saints and sinners. This is also termed in the Bible the great and dreadful day. Great and dreadful. It will be great for the righteous, but dreadful for the wicked. And so we want to analyze this tribulation a little deeper. You see, many times when we are speaking of trouble in these last days, we mix it up. Seventh-day Adventists, but mainly the Sunday keepers, but it's happening among us too, where we are using some of the events that were to transpire in the tribulation and bringing them to happen in the time of trouble, or the great and dreadful day of the Lord. But we should not be doing that. You see, what we are told, it was Jesus who proclaimed these words in Matthew chapter 24. He said, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time. No, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. And the time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation." So what we're being told here by Jesus is that there was to be a time known as the tribulation, the great tribulation, one that was never like it from the beginning of the world up to the days of Christ. They never experienced anything of the sort. And he said that except those days be shortened, none shall be saved. But Daniel chapter 12 which speaks of the time of trouble, Daniel also says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So what is the difference between these two periods of time? The tribulation, one that was never the like since the beginning of the world, and the time of trouble, there was never anyone like it since there was a nation on the earth. You see, brethren, during the tribulation, the saints were slain. They were killed. God permitted them to be killed. Whereas during the time of trouble, they are to be delivered. And the reason why God permitted them to be killed in the earlier section of the Christian era, but in the later section of the Christian era, He is to deliver them, is because in the earlier period of the Christian era, their blood was a seed being sown in the earth for a harvest that is to be garnering in these last days. So like a farmer, there's a time to sow and there's a time to reap. There's a time to plant and there's a time to harvest that which is sown or planted. And so by God's grace, I trust we are understanding what is happening here. And we should not mix up the two. Speaking of that time when the saints were losing their lives, inspiration speaking of the Waldenses, in the Great Controversy, page 78, we are told, the persecution visited for many centuries upon this God-fearing people, were endured by them with a patience and constancy that honor their Redeemer. Notwithstanding the crusades against them and the inhuman debauchery to which they were subjected, they continued to send out their missionaries to scatter the precious truth. They were hunted to death, yet their blood watered the seed sown, and it failed not to yield fruit. And so this was just one section of those who were losing their lives at that time. There were millions of God's people who stood for the truth. But by standing for the truth, they lost their lives. But in these last days, would it be the same? The answer is no. All those who stand for the truth in these last days and have their names written in the Lamb's Book of Life, the Bible said, everyone, Michael will stand up and deliver. And so the trouble that is coming, the winds that are about to blow, represents the time of trouble that is coming, but it is coming for the good of God's people. It is coming for them to experience the deliverance of God. That's what the Lord is going to do. The prophet Isaiah, speaking of God delivering his people, captioned it in these words. He said, as birds flying, so will the Lord of hosts defend Jerusalem, representing his church. Defending also, he will deliver it. And passing over, he will preserve it. That's what the Lord is about to do for his people. And so the winds represent the time of trouble, which is in the future, while the tribulation was an event that is in the past. And we should not mix up the two. At that time, the wicked men were permitted to kill God's people. But today, God is to deliver his people. And so, yes, brethren, when let loose, the winds are to strike against the faithful remnants, against those who are left after God purifies the church. But the angels who are stationed to hurt are to smite those who make war against the remnant. So that is what the time of trouble is about. It's also called the great and dreadful day, or the great and terrible day. Great for the righteous, dreadful for the wicked. Those whose names are found in the book are delivered, according to Daniel 12, verse 1. Because the 144,000, the servants of God, are not as yet sealed, nor yet enclosed or protected, guarded, and ready to take their stand with the Lamb on Mount Zion, but rather are still commingled with the tares, the angels are commanded to forestall the clash, to hold back the winds. The other four are told not to hurt until the 144,000 are sealed. Very important. If we read it again, Revelation chapter 7, verse 2. And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea. So here are four angels that are given the responsibility to hurt the earth and the sea. But there are four other angels. According to verse 1, the Bible said, after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So four are holding back the winds, which represent the time of trouble, the mark of the beast, decree, while four are preparing themselves to hurt the very place where the winds are to blow. Upon the earth, the sea, and the trees. The old world, the new world, the leaders of the earth, the church, wherever God's people are, those winds will be coming against them. And wherever the wicked are fighting against those God's people, these four angels are there to protect them and fight against those who will be coming against God's people. That's the conflict that is ahead of us. And it's all being held back until one thing is accomplished. And that is the sealing of the 144,000. And so, yes, brethren, as we observe what is happening in our world today, with this pandemic and the vaccine and everything that is happening in the world, I know many are at ease and wondering what will happen. Nothing can happen until the 144,000 are sealed. Just as it was held back in the 1800s, if the 144,000 are not sealed, it will be held back again. But God is helping us to see how close we are to the sealing, the completion of the sealing of his people, so as to help us to make ready, to get ourselves right with his help. That when that sealing time is over, we will not be found without the seal, because we are going into a conflict that the only ones that God will stand to deliver are those who are sealed. And so when these four angels begin to destroy, we're going to see where they start. They must start among the unfaithful in the church. The servant of the Lord, again in the book Great Early Writings, page 284, she tells us that God will not permit in these last days the enemy to do what he did to God's people in the dark ages, in the time of tribulation. And she puts it in these words. She said, I was pointed back to faithful Noah. When the rain descended and the flood came, Noah and his family had entered the ark, and God had shut them in. Noah had faithfully warned the inhabitants of the antediluvian world, while they had mocked and derided him. And as the waters descended upon the earth, and one after another was drowning, they beheld the ark, of which they had made so much sport, riding safely upon the waters, preserving the faithful Noah and his family. Then she says, so I saw that the people of God, who had faithfully warned the world of his coming wrath, would be delivered. God would not suffer the wicked to destroy those who were expecting translation, and who would not bow to the decree of the beast or receive his mark. I saw that if the wicked were permitted to slay the saints, Satan and all his evil hosts and all who hate God would be gratified. And oh, what a triumph it would be for his satanic majesty to have power in the last closing conflict over those who so long waited to behold him whom they love. Those who have mocked at the idea of the saints going up will witness the care of God for his people and behold their glorious deliverance. So, brethren, it's two different periods of time, two different experiences that God's people are to face. Yes, in the time of tribulation, they suffered. God permitted it. But in the time of trouble, they will be delivered. I hope that is clear. And so, when the sealing work is completed, when the sealing angel completes his work, then the angels who hold the winds will let the winds blow. And the angels who are to hurt the earth, sea, and trees will then commence their given work. It's twofold. Twofold. To let the winds blow is to permit the two-horned beasts to decree that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So that's what the winds represent. When the two-horned beasts, the United States of America, will make a law, a decree, that if you are not found worshiping on Sunday, worshiping the principles of Rome, according to the principles of Rome, you will be put to death. Found in Revelation chapter 13, verse 15. But to let the angels hurt is to allow the Lord's decree. So that's man's decree. But what is God's decree? That's what the four angels will be accomplishing. They will allow the Lord's decree to take its course, which says, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Jesus as the Lamb. Revelation 14, verse 9 and verse 10. So this is the conflict, brothers and sisters. Man would have to make a decision, and based on his decision, he will receive his reward. Either to be safe in the ark of today, like Noah was in his day, protected, delivered by God, like Noah was in his day, or face the wrath of God, which will be poured out without mixture. And obviously, those that it will be poured out upon are those who are fighting against God's people. Those who stand against God and his people in these last days are the ones that will be promulgating or promoting this Sunday blue law. And so that is the conflict ahead of us. And so the 144,000 is the most important subject. The sealing of the 144,000 is the most important subject for this particular day that we're living in right now. It's the only event that is holding back this major conflict that the world is about to jump into. And as we observe what is happening right here in the United States of America, the two-horned beasts, it is telling us that they're ready. They're ready to bring this conflict. They're ready to bring this war against God's people, this strife that God is to protect his people from. But the only reason why it is not here as yet is because God's people are not fully sealed. They're not sealed as yet. But yet, brothers and sisters, the march of the nations today, the speed to which they are moving, should be telling us that it is almost here. The sealing of the 144,000 almost accomplished. May God grant that when it does, that you and I will be found among those who are protected, who are sealed, who are there, ready for the Lord to deliver them. And so where are this 144,000 to be sealed from? Who really are these people? These elite of God, so important to him. Who are they? Where are they sealed from? You see what we are told again by the servant of the Lord in the book 2 Selected Messages, page 801. She said, just before we entered it, the time of trouble, we all received the seal of the living God. And she was here speaking of God's people. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. And the way the Lord reveals these things to his servants, his prophets, it was as if it was to happen in their day. And so she thought, she believed they were Seventh-day Adventists. And so she says, just before we entered it, the time of trouble, we all received the seal of the living God. Then I saw 4 angels cease to hold the 4 winds. The Lord has shown me clearly that the image of the beast will be formed before probation close. For it is to be the great test for the people of God by which their eternal destiny will be decided. And so this is not a subject for some other time when God's people are to be sealed. Israel of ancient time, or Israel there in the promised land, professing to be God's people, but still looking for the Messiah. They are not God's people. God's true people are found in the remnant church of today, modern Israel, the Seventh-day Adventist church. And so when John said, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel, it is Israel representing God's church today, Seventh-day Adventist church, the remnant people of God. Elaborating a little more on that, inspiration tells us in the same book, in the book Early Writings, page 38. Early Writings, page 38, paragraph 1 and 2, she says, I saw 4 angels who had a work to do on the earth and were on their way to accomplish it. Jesus was clothed with priestly garments. He gazed in pity on the remnant, then raised his hands and with a voice of deep pity cried, my blood, Father, my blood, my blood, my blood. Then I saw an exceeding bright light come from God, who sat upon the great white throne, and was shed all about Jesus. Then I saw an angel with a commission from Jesus swiftly flying to the 4 angels who had a work to do on the earth, and waving something up and down in his hand, and crying with a loud voice, hold, 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 until the servants of God are sealed in their foreheads. I asked my accompanying angel the meaning of what I heard and what the 4 angels were about to do. He said to me that it was God that restrained the powers, and that he gave his angels charge over things on the earth, that the 4 angels had power from God to hold the 4 winds, and that they were about to let them go, but while their hands were loosening and the 4 winds were about to blow, the merciful eye of Jesus gazed on the remnant that were not sealed. And he raised his hand to the Father and pleaded with him that he had spilled his blood for them. Then another angel was commissioned to fly swiftly to the 4 angels and bid them hold until the servants of God were sealed with the seal of the living God in their foreheads. And so, brothers and sisters, it is because of this work, the sealing of God's people, his protecting them before the winds begin to blow, that thousands will be saved in these last days, millions. So the devil is going to lose the battle. But the point that we are seeing here is that the servant of the Lord saw that these winds were about to be loosed. These angels were about to lose the winds. But as Jesus looked upon the remnant, who are the remnant? Seventh-day Adventists. We are called the remnant people of God. As Jesus looked upon us, he saw that we were not ready. That's what we read just now in Testimony, Volume 5, page 152. We are not just ready. There's a work yet to be done. The sealing of God's people. When Jesus saw that we were not ready, he pleaded with the Father to hold a little longer. Now, if Jesus and his Father and the angels are so wrapped up in this subject, this issue, don't you think that this is the subject that we should be focused on as God's people at this time? The sealing of God's people before these winds are loose? Yes, we are seeing that the mark of the beast is ready to come, and we are hearing a lot about it over the Seventh-day Adventist channels and lines around the world. But how much is being stressed as to this most important work that is to be done before the winds are loose, before the mark of the beast comes? We must know what it takes for us to receive this seal. That's the most important subject at this time. And as we read earlier, the servant of the Lord told us that God will reveal to us when it is important what we need to know. If I can stress it again, she says in the book, Testimonies, Volume 2, page 692, she said, there are in the scriptures some things which are hard to be understood, and which, according to the language of Peter, the unlearned and unstable rest unto their own destruction. We may not in this life be able to explain the meaning of every passage of scripture, but there are no vital points of practical truth that will be clouded in mystery. When the time shall come, in the providence of God, for the world to be tested upon the truth, for that time, minds will be exercised by his Spirit to search the scriptures, even with fasting and with prayer, until link after link is searched out and united in a perfect chain. Every fact which immediately concerned the salvation of souls will be made so clear that none need err or walk in darkness. And so, brothers and sisters, if Jesus and his Father and the angels are so concerned about this subject, the sealing of God's people before the winds are loose, this is what should be attracting our attention the most at this time that we are living in. But how much is it as a people? The enemy has stolen a march on us. He has us caught up with so many other things. Listen to the airwaves, read the chats and everything that is being spread around, and see what is being focused on at this time, instead of what do I need to do to receive the seal of God. That should be the most important subject right now. But how much are we discussing it? And so, yes, brothers and sisters, the seal of God is the most important subject. We are told there in the book's Elected Messages, again, page 16, she says, but I speak not my own words when I say that God's Spirit will pass by those who have had their day of test and opportunity, but who have not distinguished the voice of God or appreciate the movings of his Spirit. Then thousands in the 11th hour will see and acknowledge the truth. Thank God. That's his program. That's his plan. Right now, he is revealing this subject to us. this most important subject. But if we allow it to pass without giving it the earnest attention that we should, then inspiration is saying that the Spirit will pass us by. But that would not prevent the Lord from accomplishing his work, because God is going to find 144,000 that he's going to seal before the trial comes, before the winds begin to blow, so that when they're sealed, he can then use them, John said, as his servants. Hold the four winds until we seal the servants of God in their forehead. Why servants? Because they are the ones that God will use to call his people out of Babylon, out of that system that the United States of America and those she'll be working with are soon to establish. And so that system referred to as Babylon, Revelation 18, God shows that he will have an army that system will not be able to affect, because they are sealed, protected. And he will use them to give the world a final test for them to make a decision whether they will accept the decree of men or the decree of God, whether they will allow the angels to protect and shield them, or they will allow the four angels to destroy them. And so this subject of the 144,000 is the most important subject today. Today, this very moment. It is the most important subject. It is not the coming of Christ. That is the most important subject. It is not the Sunday blue law. That is the most important subject. It is not the pandemic and the vaccine. That is the most important subject. The most important subject right now is the sealing of God's people. And this is a subject as a Seventh-day Adventist we should be focused on, because the minute they are sealed, you don't have to worry with your job being taken away. You don't have to worry with whether a man wants to do you whatever. It's no more a problem, because you will be the ones in charge when you're sealed. May God help us to realize that. Hence, the question that you and I should be asking at this time is, then, what are some of the characteristics of these people? What it is that the Lord requires of me to be among this people, the 144,000. How can I be among them? And the Lord did not leave us to guess. He has given us that information also, because of the importance of the subject. Hence, in Revelation chapter 14, reading verse 1, 4, and 5, the Bible says, "And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their forehead." I say, praise the Lord. Which tells me that God is going to find 144,000 from among the remnant people, Seventh-day Adventists. The question is, would you and I be a part of them? We have one of three places to be as a Seventh-day Adventist. And we're the ones to determine that with the help of God, where we will be. Those three positions that we can occupy as a Seventh-day Adventist is: one, to be sealed among the 144,000. Or two, those who are faithful but would have died, that God will resurrect to be with the 144,000. Another wonderful study we may do at another time. Those with the 144,000. But there's another class in the church. There's another class in the church. Those who will not be faithful when put to death to be resurrected. Those who will not be among the 144,000 who will never die. But that's what inspiration said of them. They are living saints that will never die. Then who will they be amongst? They will be amongst a class of people in the church who will be lost. And that's one of the saddest positions that a Seventh-day Adventist can find themselves in, with all the information that God has given us to come up after the millennium among the lost. There are many in the church today who will be in that group. I trust it's none of us sitting here this morning, this evening, whenever you're listening to this presentation, that will be among the class who will be coming up among the lost that are part of the church today. And so here John said he saw them sealed, and they're standing with the Lamb on Mount Zion, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. He says, verse 4, these are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb, whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. 144,000. The Bible is saying who they are in these verses. We are seeing the characteristics of these people. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. What it is to be virgins, what it is to not be defiled with women, and what it is for them to be following the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. Hence, they cannot be those Jews in the promised land or in Palestine or in Jerusalem today who are still looking for the Lamb, looking for the Messiah. They must be Christians. It is Christians who are following the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. More so, Seventh-day Adventist Christians, as we saw, sealed from among the remnant people of God. But the Bible said they are not defiled with women. Does it mean that they were never married? No. Women here in the Bible refers to churches. And so what God is saying is that there are men and women within the remnant people of God, amongst them, and they are not mixed up and contaminated with the practices and beliefs of the other churches, women. They believe a pure, unadulterated truth as God has given it to the church, and they are not contaminating it, defiling it with all that is coming into the church from those other churches today. And we see what is happening today, what the church is being flooded with, the practices and beliefs and behavior of those other churches, those women. And so women, we are told, represents churches. In this book, The Great Controversy, page 4, 381, Inspiration said in Revelation 17, Babylon is represented as a woman, a figure which is used in the Bible as a symbol of a church. A virtuous woman represents a pure church. A vile woman, an apostate church. And so when the Bible says, these are they which are not defiled with women, God is simply telling us that the 144,000 are not defiling themselves with the women of the world, the churches of the world. Babylon, the fallen son of the churches. I hope that is clear. The Bible said that they are virgins. So if they're not defiling themselves with the other practices and beliefs of the women around, then they're virgins. And to be virgins, Inspiration tells us, they profess a pure faith. She said in Christ Object Lesson, page 406, paragraph 3, the two classes of watchers represent the two classes who profess to be waiting for their Lord. They are called virgins because they profess a pure faith. And so if you're a Seventh-day Adventist brothers and sisters, you need to know what the pure Adventist faith is and adhere to that, hold fast to that. Anything that is coming in that is not, you should resist it. In another Bible, in another text in the Bible, it tells us you should sigh and cry for it. Keep it away from your own lives. And in a loving way, help others to see that what we are practicing and doing, what we are taking in among us, is not the pure, unadulterated doctrine of the church. We should resist it. And so, yes, brothers and sisters, this is what it will take to be one of the 144,000. Being among God's people as Christians, not defiling ourselves with the abominations of the other women, but lifting up the pure and unadulterated truth in our lives, in our words, in our deportment, in whatever we do. Unadulterated truth should be lifted up. And as we wrap up this subject, I know the question usually arises as to whether this number is a literal number, because today the church composes a population or comprise a population of approximately in the 20 millions, 21 to 22 million Seventh-day Adventists, and it is growing. And many times the question is asked, why only 144,000? That number cannot be literal. It is symbolic. It represents that great multitude that is also found in Revelation chapter 7. That's what we are told. That in one point they are represented as 144,000, in another sense they're represented as a great multitude which no man could number. Far from the truth, brothers and sisters. There are two different company of people found in Revelation chapter 7. The first are sealed from Israel. They're sealed before the winds are loosed. The second comes from the nations. And they're sealed while the winds are blowing. Two different company of people. And yes, this number is a literal number. And for proof to that, as we have just said, why would the Lord in Revelation 7, verse 1 to 4, tell us of 144,000, a specific number, sealed from Israel, the church? But then now he tells us of another company, a number that you cannot number, coming from not Israel, the church, but from every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. Two different companies. And it would not fit for you to say one is numbered and the other one unnumbered, and the number is just the same as the unnumbered. Doesn't make sense. Then why give it a number? But that's what the Lord is saying, brothers and sisters. It's 144,000 who will be sealed. It's not the first time God is doing this. In the days of Christ, from a church, we don't know what the population was, a few millions, the Jews, God was only able to find first 12 men that he was able to train and work with. Then they grew to 120 that he poured the Holy Spirit upon. When the Holy Spirit came upon that 120, it was a literal number. But after they received the outpouring of the Holy Spirit and prepared for mission, they began gathering such a number that is unnumbered. To this very day, their work continues to gather saints to the Lord. Something similar is to happen, but this will happen among the living. Their work was for the dead, but something is going to be done now for the living, those who will not die. And God is showing us two companies of people who will never die. In Revelation chapter 7, the 144,000 and the great multitude. So there are two different company of people, brothers and sisters. Sister White confirms that in this book, Great Controversy, page 665, where she shows all the saints as they are saved gather around the throne. And she identifies them in four groups of people. Who are they? She says, nearest the throne are those who were once zealous in the cause of Satan, but who plucked as brands from the burning have followed their Savior with deep, intense devotion. This is one group. Next are those who perfected Christian characters in the midst of falsehood and infidelity. Those who honor the law of God when the Christian world declared it void. Who would they be? That was 2. Then she says, and the millions of all ages who were martyred for their faith. This is 3. Then she says, and beyond these 3 classes of group or companies, she said, and beyond is the great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hands. How do we identify these 4 groups of people? There was a theory in the church at one time where we were teaching, some still hold to that fact, that the great multitude represents the dead of all the ages, all the dead. But this statement doesn't say that. This statement shows us 2 companies of dead saints and 2 companies of living. Who are they? The first company, those nearest the throne, those who were plucked as brands from the burning, mean they were men and women who were not with God and living estranged from God, and the Lord called them and made them his people, and they become God's people, but they die. They will be saved. Next, those who perfected Christian character in the midst of falsehood and infidelity. This is the 144,000. They're the ones that John said have no gall in their mouth. They're the ones who are following the Lamb whithersoever he goeth, as Christians that will perfect Christian character and will not bow to the beast and his image, but preach against it. That's the 144,000. Then she says the millions of martyrs throughout the ages, from faithful Abel to the last saint that will be martyred. This is their company. So we have 2 classes of dead saints here, and they do not represent the great multitude, because she said beyond these classes that we have just identified are the great multitude which no man could number. And so the great multitude is not the 144,000. The great multitude is not the dead of all the ages. Hence, they must be those that the 144,000 will be gathering in, calling out of Babylon in these last days, who will also be saved and translated when Jesus comes. I trust that that is clear. And so, yes, brothers and sisters, they are not the 144,000, and the 144,000 is a literal number. In the book, verse 1, as we read just now, Revelation 14, verse 1, mark what John said here. Because if you remember what we read in Revelation chapter 7, verse 4, John said, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Revelation 7:4. He said he heard the number. It meant someone was telling him. But then here in chapter 14, verse 1, he had the blessed privilege of seeing them. And what he saw, he said, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. So he heard the number, but now he sees the number, and it was the same number, 144,000. And so those who are telling us that this is not a literal number, I think we need to study this subject again, because it is the devil trying to tell us, don't take this subject so serious when it is. And that's why we are told to strive to be among them. It is a literal number. Sister White clinches in these words in early writings, page 15, when she, speaking of the saints as they were traveling to the city, on a high path cast up above the world, she said, soon we heard the voice of God like many waters, which gave us the day and hour of Jesus' coming. The living saints 144,000 in number knew and understood the voice, while the wicked thought it was thunder and an earthquake. Now note that. 144,000 in number. Why would God take the pain to place these two words here? In number, if that number was not a literal number. It is. 144,000 in number. I cannot say there are 10 of us in this room. If there are 10 people in the room, there are 10 of us here in number. If it was 12 or 50 or 36 or an unnumbered company. For me to say there are 10 of us in the room, and it's something that I'm definite about. And so here inspiration is saying 144,000 in number. That's the number, brothers and sisters. Not only that, she says the living saints, indicating to us that indeed, as we said before, they are living saints that will never die. Brothers and sisters, these people are the ones that will be sealed just before the winds are loosed. So that when the winds are blowing, God will use them like he used the 120 on the day of Pentecost when they received the outpouring of the Holy Spirit and beyond, to preach the gospel to the world among the dead. They will be preaching the gospel to the world to gather the living, those who will not die, those who will be alive on the earth when Jesus comes. I trust that this discussion here this morning is understood, and by God's grace, we will determine in our hearts to seek him more diligently, to understand what he's saying here before it is too late. But before I close, I cannot leave without dealing with this last and very important point. Because we saw when they will be sealed. They will be sealed before the winds are loosed. We saw what the winds represent and why it is the Lord has to hold it. In that if he permits it to blow before they are sealed, he will not have a people, he will not have a church to proclaim the loud cry of the three angels' message in the time of the loud cry, or in the time when Babylon is established, to call God's people out of it. We also saw that they are Seventh-day Adventists. They are sealed from the church. And we saw what Jesus is doing in order to have them sealed. He's holding the wind. He's pleading with his Father to hold those winds. But the question is, what they were doing in order to be sealed. How are they sealed? In this book, Testimonies to Ministers and Gospel Workers, page 445, we are told this sealing of the servants of God is the same that was shown to Ezekiel in vision. John also had been a witness of this most startling revelation. And so here the servant of the Lord is telling us that what we are reading of in John the Revelator, of the sealing of God's people, there was another prophet who also saw it. And she said it is Ezekiel. So what did Ezekiel see that John is there speaking about? We're not left to guess. In this other book, Testimonies to the Church, volume 3, page 266, 267, she tells us exactly what the two prophets saw. She says, the true people of God who have the spirit of the work of the Lord and the salvation of souls at heart will ever view sin in its real sinful character. They will always be on the side of faithful and they will always be on the side of faithful and plain dealing with sins which easily besets the people of God. Especially in the closing work for the church, in the sealing time of the 144,000 who are to stand without fault before the throne of God, will they feel most deeply the wrongs of God's professed people. And then when you get, I'm going to encourage you to take this book and read it. She goes into Ezekiel chapter 9, quoting from Ezekiel 9. But she continues to say, those who receive the pure mark of truth wrought in them by the power of the Holy Ghost. Represented by the mark by the man in linen are those that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the church. Their love for purity and honor and glory of God is such, and they have so clear a view of the exceeding sinfulness of sin, that they are represented as being in agony, even sighing and crying. Read the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. So what we're seeing here, she began in the same statement. The only thing I did here was leave out Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4 and 5. She quoted there. For space and time, that was left out in the slide here. But she quoted it there. But what she was dealing with here on in this paragraph was she said, especially in the closing work for the church in the sealing time of the 144,000. And in the same breath, she tells us here, read the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. So while speaking of the 144,000, which is found in Revelation 7, she's telling us to read the 9th chapter of Ezekiel. And that is why inspiration told us this sealing of the servants of God is the same that was shown to Ezekiel in vision. We will not be able to go into this today for time. What time is spent. But I'm going to encourage you, my brothers and sisters, to read Ezekiel chapter 9. Ezekiel chapter 9 reveals what is going to happen to those who are in the church, upholding the pure, unadulterated beliefs of the church. From those who are bringing into it the practices and behaviors, defiling themselves with other women, the other churches. Ezekiel tells us exactly what happens and what we are called to do in order to escape this purification of God's church that is soon to fall upon his people, to realize that 144,000 who will finish the work. And at another time, we're going to pick up this subject from this point where we can go a little deeper into assessing what becomes of those who are not sealed. May God bless you. I trust that our discussion today was a blessing to you. And by God's grace, it's going to encourage you to dig deeper into this subject. This is not a subject for us to be laying on the shelf or following men that are telling us it is not important for us to study. If Jesus and his Father and the angels are so engrossed and wrapped in this subject, the winds were ready to loose, Jesus was there pleading with his Father to hold it a little longer, then this must be an important subject to us in the church today. And if we are not studying it as we should, we need to start before it is too late. May God bless you. Let us pray as we close. Amen. Loving Father and dear God, we want to thank you for this, another wonderful privilege you've granted us to sit at your feet, to meditate upon these deep and very important subject for this day and hour that we are living in. This subject that is the most important for Seventh-day Adventists at this time, the sealing of the 144,000. I pray, dear Father, that if in any way anything was said this day that would bring any confusion to this subject, that you will clear it up in the minds of your people, that we will understand what you're doing and what you're saying, so that none of us that will listen and your Spirit will lead will fail to receive your seal, to be either one of or one with the 144,000. So bless us now as we bring this discussion to a close, and we pray, dear Father, that your name would be glorified through everything that was said and done. We give you praise, we give you thanks. In Jesus' precious name, amen.